Friday. Your man Louie T is here with another installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. Try to make this one quick. You know how I like to do on Fridays, in and out. Don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm already a thief as it is of your time, and I don't like stealing any more than I need to. Okay. I do it for the greater good. All right. Or at least that's what I tell myself, so I sleep better at night. But anyway, I got an interesting show. It's not, the most provocative, but I'm delivering on a promise. And I love when dudes win. I love to see guys win. I love to see people in general who deserve to win. So we're going to talk about a couple of big dubs that have transpired. And then we want to talk about the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Do they have a legitimate shot to do something big this year? We'll get to all of that and more today on the LouieTeeNetwork podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 332nd installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's quickly talk some NBA basketball. I hate when I do that. NBA basketball. Let's just talk NBA. National Basketball Association basketball. I mean, I guess you could say that, but let's just talk some basketball, some NBA. So this NBA playoffs has been crazy because expect the unexpected. So Joel Embiid gets hurt, doesn't play in game one. Doc Rivers allows James Harden to go to Vegas before the series on some Dennis Rodman last dance shit. He comes back and he scores 45 and leads the 76ers to a victory in game one on the road against the Celtics. Joel Embiid comes back for game two and they get run out of the building. And now the series is 1-1 heading back to Philadelphia. That's crazy, but it's not the craziest thing that I've seen, but that doesn't make any sense. But I told you guys that we were going to win without Ja Morant, and we did. So it's not far-fetched. Generally, when a team is down their best player, it's human nature to relax. Instead of you revving up the engine and putting your foot on their throats, you go, oh, they don't have their best player. This game should be a piece of cake. They didn't account for DeAnthony Melton knocking down 6 threes. They didn't account for James Harden having the best performance since he's come over to Philadelphia. They didn't account for the 76ers doing what they did in game one. That series is tied at 1. It's going to be a really good series. We thought that it would be. We thought Milwaukee would still be around, and whomever, lasted this bloodbath would have to then deal with Milwaukee. The winner of this series is going to the NBA Finals, representing the Eastern Conference. I don't care if the Heat win or the Knicks win, they're not beating either Philadelphia or Boston Celtics 4 times in a 7-game series. So that's just how it's going to go. Now, I'll say this, in the West, and that was interesting, no Julius Randle in game one for the Knicks. They play well. They're leading at halftime. They come out in the second half and they get blitzed by Jimmy Butler and Kevin Love and company. And they lose game one at home. Randle returns in game two. Butler does not. He had an ankle injury late in game one. And, of course, the Heat aren't able to win. That series is heading back to Miami. That's going to be a really good series. I really don't know what's going to happen. I felt like this before the Jimmy Butler injury. A healthy Jimmy Butler, they're going to win the series, they being the Miami Heat. But Butler's not healthy anymore. All bets are off. So ultimately, we'll see what happens there. Golden State, LA. I was pretty adamant about my prediction. I still feel the same exact way, even after the Lakers went in. And what did I tell you? I said the Lakers can't shoot. And I said that will be their demise unless they dominate the paint. Anthony Davis had a ridiculous game one, 30 points, 20 rebounds, one of those types of Anthony Davis performances that we know he's fully capable of. But that wasn't the reason, because the Lakers made 6 threes and the Warriors made 18. That's a difference of 12 threes. That's 36 points more for the Warriors behind the arc. That's a 36-point differential. That's almost damn near impossible to overcome in today's modern NBA. But you know how the Lakers were able to do that? They shot 25 more free throws than the Golden State Warriors and made 20 more free throws. So they pretty much negated that Warriors advantage behind the three-point line by going to the free throw line and killing them at the stripe. Meanwhile, the Warriors took a bunch of threes and didn't get to the free throw line, and that's how the Lakers were able to steal game one. And even with all of that said, it came down to a Jordan Poole hoist that his teammate Steph Curry was not happy about for the Lakers to prevail. Then in game two, the same thing happened. Lakers can't shoot. They made, I think, 10 threes. That's a lot for them. Unfortunately, the Warriors made like 24 or something like that, 25, and outscored them by like, it was 30, and I think they had 21 threes that they made. So that's 21 times 3 is 63. Lakers made 10, that's 30. So outscored them by 33 points at the three-point line, and they won the game by 27. So, and the free throw disparity, not even close to what it was in game one. And of course, Anthony Davis, incapable of putting together back-to-back dominant performances. He went to sleep. They lost the game by 27. Now, again, human nature set in. The Lakers did what they set out to do, steal one. They did the same thing against Memphis. They stole game one, and then they pretty much went to sleep in game two. Now the question is, and Golden State's been a terrible road team all season long, will that uphold itself? Because when they had to, they won on the road against the Kings twice, not once, twice. In that pivotal game 5, whomever wins game 5 in a 2-2 series usually goes on to win the series, and Golden State went to Sacramento and won in game 5. The Kings showed their inexperience. Then they had to come back to Sacramento when we didn't think that was going to be the case, because they didn't take care of business at home, and they won it in a winner takes all game 7. So they've won on the road, but that hasn't been their forte this season. So we'll see if that trend continues, if the Lakers do what they did in the first series, which is go home, take care of business, and really put the series in a chokehold. I don't think they're going to do that, but after watching what they were able to do in game 1, if Anthony Davis can replicate that, and they can get Hachimura had a really good game 2 after being really quiet in game 1. If they can get those types of contributions in the same game, the Lakers will have a fighting chance. I still think it's the Warriors series to lose, but that series is a little bit more interesting than I thought it was going to be honest with you. I thought Golden State was going to win both games at home, and then, again, series doesn't start until the road team wins a game. Well, that series started after game 1. Lakers took game 1. The Phoenix series doesn't feel like a series to me. Maybe they win tonight. If they don't win tonight, the series done. So they better take care of business tonight. But I just don't see them beating the Nuggets in Denver, and Chris Paul now being out for the next 2, maybe 3 games. I just think they're cooked. I already told you guys from the outset of the postseason, their bench is so thin because of the trade, and they had to do this to acquire Kevin Durant. They can't afford any of their starters getting injured. And as much as I can't stand Chris Paul, you guys know I have like the utmost contempt for Chris Paul, and I love nothing more than to see him fail. I don't want to see him get hurt, but I've minimized his impact on that team, but at the end of the day, they need him. They can't afford to not have him. And now he's out for 2 games, and you're already down 0-2. It's not looking good for the Phoenix Suns. We'll see what they do tonight at home. Anyway, I digress. I want to send a quick little shout out to my guy, P-Lo Dollars. I saw your comment when I first came in the stream today about the passing of your grandmother. Prayers up, everybody in the comment section, fellow mob members. Y'all know what we do when we see one of our mob members down. We pick them up. So send some prayers up for P-Lo Dollars and his family as they continue to mourn the loss of his grandmother. So my condolences to you and your family. And you'll get through it. It's not going to be easy, but you'll continue to. And again, the best way to honor someone like your grandmother is to do what she would want you to do. Live your life the way she would want you to live your life. All right. So prayers up. Real quick, before we get into the show today, for those of you who missed the show last night, I dropped a gem on your melon, which I'm about to do here in a second. I got a brand new channel. It's a music channel. All right. MusicHead University is the name of the channel on YouTube. I uploaded some content yesterday. I'm in the process of putting some more content up there. It'll probably be some more either over the weekend or next week on Monday, early next week. But either way, MusicHead University is an endeavor I've been working on since December. Finally was able to launch it yesterday, and I'm looking forward to doing that. That it's a different side of me, your man Louie T. I love music. So it's the beauty of that channel is it allows me to do the 2 things that I'm passionate about. I've got my football fix here, and now I'm going to have my musical fix over on MusicHead University. So if you haven't already checked it out, please do so. Subscribe, or as I like to say, enroll in the university known as MusicHead University, MusicHead U. I would love to have your feedback. I've already been chopping it up with a few people based off the few videos that I've put out, and I'm enjoying that already. So if you haven't done so, please go ahead, subscribe to MusicHead U. If you're not a music fan, then that channel is not going to appeal to you, then don't subscribe. But if you love music, or you just want to hear me talk about music, listen to some music, please, by all means, subscribe. So with that said, let's jump into the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So I want to talk about Lamar Jackson, not the quarterback, but the agent. So remember this offseason, I talked about Lamar Jackson and his situation and how he and his mother were acting as his agent, and it was going to be an interesting situation. And I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And I said, this is going to be a situation worth monitoring. And so we didn't know how it was going to go. And at times it looked a little sketchy. We had the whole guy from, Miami that was involved, and it seemed to be a shit show. And I didn't know how this was going to turn out, but I was really anxious to see where this would go, because how this went may impact others into the future. And Lamar Jackson isn't the first player to represent himself, and he won't be the last. Okay. Um, but he's the most high profile to do so. I don't know if I recall a quarterback. I've heard of offensive linemen, defensive linemen, running backs, things of that nature representing themselves. I remember Russell Okung representing himself and asking to be paid in cryptocurrency, right? Um, so we've known other players to represent themselves, but not as high profile as a quarterback, because there's offensive tackle money, there's defensive end money, there's cornerback money, and then there's quarterback money. And none of them are the same. Okay. None of them are remotely close to quarterback money. And so you're talking about a nice piece of change here that's being negotiated. And I was interested to see if he could tackle all the obstacles, all of the jargon that is in an NFL contract. And hearing his GM, Eric DaCosta, pretty much say Lamar Jackson did a fantastic job as his as his own agent. It was wonderful, understood the language in the contract, what everything meant. I was blown away. And, it's funny because at times during this process, it wasn't the cleanest. And you hear Lamar talk about some of the things that he did. And we've had these discussions about what happens in a negotiation. One of my best friends was once a claims agent. And what that entailed was he would go out on behalf of his company to negotiate a deal with someone that had been in an accident, and it was the fault of the railroad. And so he would go there with a number in mind of trying to get the deal done. Like, we don't want this thing to go to court. You go there, you assess the situation, and if you can lowball them, right? You don't go with a $75,000 limit to get the deal done, and you start at 75,000. You go there and you say, "Oh man, I'm so sorry for all of the pain and suffering that this situation has caused you and your family. How about we stroke you a check for $55,000? We are so sorry." And if that person is hurting bad enough for bread, they'll take the 55,000, and your company's going to pat you on the back because they gave you 75,000 and you got it done for $20,000 less. It was going to be interesting to see if Lamar was able to go in there and sit down with people who do this on a daily for a living and get the best possible deal for himself. And it's amazing because he talked about requesting a trade. And I told you guys on the podcast that I don't think Lamar truly wants to leave. This is all about the money. Okay. He didn't want to leave. And I said, the Ravens aren't going to let him. The only reason they put that non-exclusive franchise tag on him is because they wanted someone to put an offer sheet in front of him that they could match and say, "All right, Lamar, you got your deal." They weren't going to let him go anywhere. And so it was posturing back and forth. They put the non-exclusive on him. He requested a trade. He was posturing in the media, on social media and things of that nature. But he never wanted to go anywhere, and they never wanted to let him go anywhere. And you see this with players all the time. They scrub their social media clean of anything affiliated with the team. And we've seen guys like Von Miller request a trade hours before signing a long-term deal with the franchise tag slapped on him. We've seen guys do this. That's a part of the negotiation. So when we hear a player request a trade, immediately, oh my God, he wants out. 5 places, Bleacher Report's going to put out 5 places where this player can go. He really doesn't want to go anywhere. He just wants his money, is what it all boils down to. And to hear Lamar pretty much say, I didn't want to go anywhere, that was just a negotiating tactic. Like, I just wanted my money. But to take it a step further, we've got the specifics on the Lamar deal now. And this shit is mind-boggling. Like, I just don't want you guys to gloss over the fact that he got this deal done himself. Him and his mom got this deal done by themselves. I need you guys to understand how tough this is and that they did this on their own. And I want you to acknowledge all of the things that are in this deal for Lamar Jackson. Like, this is not your standard run-of-the-mill deal. And no agent brokered this deal. No agent negotiated this deal. They did this by themselves. This is fantastic. So we talked about all offseason, man, this is going to be crazy. I've been talking about this since last year. Man, this is going to be crazy. Lamar is going to represent himself. This could go sideways because in the negotiation, the club is going to start using things against you. Hey, you haven't won but one playoff game in 5 tries. You know, they're going to start throwing stuff at you. And that's where the agent usually comes in as the buffer. You don't hear that stuff as a client. You know, as the player, you don't hear the organization that you've shed blood, sweat, and tears for dogging you in this negotiation. You don't hear that. But when you're the agent and they're speaking to you directly, guess what? You got to put your big boy pants on because they're going to shit on you right in front of your face. It's a part of the negotiation. And you've got to be willing to take that and give it right back to them. And he was able to do that. So Lamar Jackson's 5-year, $260 million deal sounds like this. This is the first number that jumps out at you. $80 million in year 1, the most money any NFL player has ever gotten in year 1 of a deal. $72.5 million at time of signing. That is insane numbers for Lamar Jackson. Right. The next big number, $135 million fully guaranteed at signing. That's his bread. Okay. So once he signs on the dotted line, he's guaranteed to get $135 million no matter what happens. The next big number, $156 million over the first 3 years. Most deals that are 5 years, you really only care about the first 3 years of the deal because after the 3rd season, there's usually an exit ramp for the team where there's not as much guaranteed money. And if they want to get out of the deal, they can. So the most important part, that's why I told you a lot of times guys don't make it to the end of their 2nd or 3rd contracts, especially if they're long-term deals. You hear these big astronomical numbers. Oh, man, he signed a 5-year, $150 million deal. He'll never make it to year 5 of that deal. He'll be lucky if he makes it to year 4 of that deal. Either they'll rip that old deal up and give him new money and extend him after year 3, or they're going to cut him after year 3 if he's not producing at the level that they thought he was going to when they signed him to that massive deal. Either way, chances are you're not going to make it to the 5th and final year of that deal and see every single penny of that $150 million. It's rare in the NFL. It's not like baseball. It's not like basketball where once you sign on the dotted line, you're getting every single penny of that contract. That's not how it works in the NFL. So it's important that those first 3 years you cash in and get most of the money that is in that deal then, because after that, there are no guarantees. So $156 million over the first 3 years is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Just think of it this way. The $156 million, if I'm not mistaken, is more than Derek Carr's deal altogether. And same with Daniel Jones altogether. Like, I think those deals were right around the $140 million range. I think both of those deals were somewhere in that neighborhood, like 138, 140, something like that. Yeah. Okay. So he's getting that in the first 3 years. Guaranteed. Here are the 2 kickers, though. This is what like puts the cherry on top. Like Lamar knew what the hell he was doing. He's got a no trade clause, right? Which is standard. Once you sign that contract, it's big. You get to determine the outcome of your situation, not the club. I get to determine if I want to end up playing for the Los Angeles Chargers or not. You don't get to determine if I play for the Detroit Lions or the Carolina Panthers. I'll tell you where I want to go. The no tag clause is the one that I looked at and said, okay, Lamar, you go ahead with your bad self, man. Look at Lamar. He said, we're not going to end up in this situation again. When this contract is over, or we decide to, part ways mutually, or you decide that you want to hold the bag over my head but don't want to actually give it to me, you won't be able to slap a tag on me to restrict me from going to get the bag elsewhere. So the next time we have this conversation and I come to you and I say, hey, where the bag at? Hand it over. Okay? Hand it over. Because if we got to play this game back and forth, I'll just go get my bag from somebody else. So there is no franchise tagging Lamar Jackson the next time around. And this deal is essentially up in 2027. So 4 seasons from now, it's 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So 5 years, excuse me, it's a 5-year deal. Lamar Jackson will only be 30 years old. In 2027, he'll be 30 years old. Now, will there be injuries or anything like that? We don't know. But if he's relatively healthy, if he's still Action Jackson, he'll be 30 years old. The legs will still work at that point, and he would have matured even more as a passer by then. He could not be back in Baltimore by then. And by then, the Ravens may be done with him. Like, okay, he's not the same Lamar. We need to go get a younger, sprier, QB to bring in here. But if he's still the same old Lamar, that's going to be interesting. But kudos to Lamar Jackson and his mama and anybody else that was involved in the process of them getting this done. He saved the 3% that you have to pay your agent to get a deal done. That amount, I think it amounted to $7.6 million. And he just gave that to his mom. Like, hey, mom, this is your money. You were my agent, my co-agent in this process. You take the 7.6 million. Ain't that dope? That you just get to say, hey, mom, here you go. You were my agent. You take this 3%. I mean, I love it. Now, the question is, will this start a trend in the NFL? I don't think so. One, I don't think most players want to have to deal with what Lamar dealt with, meaning, going through the negotiation process, going through the jargon, figuring out what's what, what mechanisms are in the contract, what kicks this bonus in, what makes this happen. If this doesn't happen, then this should happen. They don't want to deal with that. They want somebody else to have to deal with that. Most players don't want to do that themselves. 2, like I mentioned, players have already done this, but it's a very laborious and tedious process. And I don't think you're going to see many players opt for this method. And also, I don't think quarterbacks are really going to be looking to do that. Good for him. Good for his mom. Good for the Ravens. Glad that this situation got resolved because that's where he belongs. And this is the most talent that they've put around him. It's not even close. Odell Beckham Jr., Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, they're loaded. They are loaded. It's going to be interesting to see what they're able to do. If that defense is able to play solid football and they don't have to score 37. Remember last year, early in the season, they were out-dueling teams because the defense wasn't stopping anybody. If the defense is just solid with all of that offensive fireworks and what firepower that they have, they could be dangerous, man. We already know what Lamar's value is to that team. So, anyway, I digress. Let's get to our next segment of the show and social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. I want to start this conversation off by talking about Aaron Rodgers, and then we'll get to your comments and we'll go from there. Aaron Rodgers is now a New York Jet. Jets have I did not know this. The Jets have the longest playoff drought in the NFL right now. Haven't made it since 2010. I didn't realize that was the longest playoff drought. So they're dying. They're starving for a winner in New York. Aaron Rodgers, and I didn't realize this because I didn't watch any of his presser because I really didn't care. But he's going to be wearing the number 8. He's going back to his collegiate number. I wonder why. Was Joe Namath 12? He had to be. He was 12. That's what it is. Because I couldn't think. I was like, why isn't he wearing 12 in New York? That number's retired. Joe Namath wore 12. Duh. Okay. So he's going back to his collegiate number of 8. It's going to be weird seeing him in a single-digit number. But none of that matters. What matters is, can he go to New York and restore some type of order with that organization and upset the apple cart in the AFC East? Because the Bills have run that division the last, 2-3 years. They took the torch from New England, and it didn't look like they were going to relinquish it anytime soon. The Dolphins have been knocking at the door, but the Bills are like, get the hell out of here. No soliciting. All right. We don't want whatever you're selling. This is our division. Bad back. However, the Jets are like, we're not knocking at the door. We just going to come and kick the bitch down. They beat the Bills last year. All right. And they're not afraid of them. And now with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers in tow, have you seen the roster that they've assembled? Look, I made jokes about the Jets whoring themselves, and they continue to do it. You know, Randall Cobb shouldn't be on their roster. Aaron Rodgers is making demands, and they're acquiescing. It's the same thing Tom Brady did when he got to Tampa Bay. He made demands, and the Bucs bent over backwards to meet those demands because you want your future first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback to be comfortable and happy. The result in Tampa, the end result, was a Super Bowl in Tom Brady's first season. Will the result be the same for the Jets? They've got a hell of a receiving core. They've got tight ends out of the wazoo. They've got running backs for days. Offensive line-wise, they've made as many alterations as one can to a line that already wasn't terrible. Just needed a tinker here or there. They've went out and made even more, moves to make that offensive line even more solid for Aaron Rodgers. That defense was howling last year, okay? Without remember the Patriots game that was like 0-0 or like 3-3 or some crap like that? And then they had the punt return they gave up with no time left in the fourth quarter. They kicked it to that Marcus Jones rookie, and he took it to the crib. And that was the game when the rookie wide receiver Garrett Wilson came in the locker room screaming at Zach Wilson that he sucks ass. And after the game, the media asked Zach Wilson, did he feel like the game was his fault? And he was like, nah. Mac Jones had to play in the same weather that I did. This one wasn't on me. And that's when they pretty much revolted. And that's when the organization said, hey, we got to bench his ass. He doesn't get it. He was suffering from some Robert Griffin III vibes there, where he just no self-awareness, didn't understand what was going on. He didn't get it. And they had to sit his ass down. And while most people want to give up on Zach Wilson, Aaron Rodgers coming to town may be the best thing for him. You get another guy in there who at one point in his career was probably self-absorbed in Aaron Rodgers, but can, teach Zach Wilson some of the finer points of the game. Look, I've never felt like Aaron Rodgers was the teacher type, but neither was Kobe Bryant until the end of his career, where he just started giving out tips left and right. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is at that point of his career now where he's found that nirvana, right? That inner peace. And now he's willing to share all of his tricks of the trade with a young quarterback that desperately needs his help, that has a skill set that's very similar to his. Just needs some guidance, maybe. It'd be interesting to see if Zach Wilson can come out of the other side of this thing, a reformed quarterback, or if he just sucks. And maybe that'll just be the case. He just stinks. Either way, the Jets are loaded. And defensively, they added a pass rusher, which I thought was the last piece of the puzzle for them. They can cover on the back end. They got linebackers that are athletic and fast and physical. They got Quinnen Williams on the middle of their defense. And Sheldon Rankins, I think, was inside as well. They just needed some guys to get to the quarterback. Enter in Will McDonald the fourth, and all of a sudden, I'm like, that group over there on the defensive side is just as nasty as any in the league, with an aggressive defensive coordinator or head coach rather, and Robert Saleh, who understands exactly what he's looking for out of his defense. Look out for the Jets, man. I'm just saying, and adding Aaron Rodgers to that group. Some people think he's washed. I don't. I think he was hurt last year. He just won MVP 2 years in a row prior to last season. Like, he didn't just fall off a cliff, and that can happen once you get to a certain age. You can fall off of the proverbial cliff. Father Time can come tap you on the shoulder, and without notice, it's over. I don't think that's what just happened to Aaron Rodgers. We'll see. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say. All right. So if you're out there, want to have your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive. We'll get to as many of them as we can, but I can't guarantee you that we'll get to any of them because super chats come first. You want to ensure that your comment gets read. Super chats are the way to go. So, let's get to the comment section, and we start off with Max on the beat. I think that's the first super of the day. Make sure. Yes, Max on the beat. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Max, writes, "Sup, Louie? DJ MVP season incoming. I wouldn't be shocked if he played his best football." It's always tough sometimes. It's amazing because we just assume when you're playing in a contract season that a guy's going to ball out. But the weight of having to play well for your money doesn't always motivate a player. It can make him play worse sometimes. Not everybody handles pressure the same. I thought Lamar was handling it beautifully early in the season last year. He was playing at an MVP level before he got, before I think it was like maybe the first 5 or 6 weeks. That he was playing at an exceptionally high level. Then they started to come back to earth, did the Ravens, and then he got hurt. But I wouldn't be shocked with all the weapons that they've surrounded him with. What's going to be interesting is we've only known Lamar Jackson pretty much in Greg Roman's offense. I think as a rookie, he might have had a different coordinator. I don't know if Cameron or Caldwell, Jim Caldwell, was still there at the tail end of the Flacco era, transitioning to the Lamar era. But I really feel like that rookie season, it might have been a different coordinator. And then that first year of Lamar being a full-time starter, they went and got Greg Roman. I firmly believe that. And so we only really know Lamar with Greg Roman. So I'm interested to see what this new iteration looks like and what they're going to try to do to, take his passing game to the next level. They got all these weapons now, but don't lose sight of Lamar, the runner. Don't lose sight of the running backs and the tight ends in the process of that. So I'm anxious to see how they juggle everything. He's got better protection now with JMS, John Michael Schmitz. And I can't be who is the Giants still got John Michael Schmitz, didn't they? Am I tripping? Maybe I'm tripping. Let's find out. I feel like the Giants got John Michael Schmitz, and maybe JMS isn't who he was referring to. Yeah, the Giants got John Michael Schmitz. So let me see if it's somebody else with those same initials. Nah, I don't know who he's talking about, but I'll take your word for it. And we added Hyatt to the receiving core that, you talking about Daniel Jones. I don't know why I just assumed he was talking about Lamar Jackson. I saw J. I didn't even think about the D part. I just saw J, and I just went Lamar Jackson. He's talking about Daniel Jones. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. John Michael Schmitz got drafted by the Giants. Then he said we got Hyatt. I'm like, wait, bells and whistles started going off. I'm like, Jalen Hyatt is a Giant. What are you talking about? Aha. Giants. And Max is a Giants fan. There's no way in hell Daniel Jones is winning an MVP. Sorry, Max. Not happening. However, this could be a massive season for him. Second year in a system, in a scheme that I think they tailored to his strengths. And now he's even more comfortable with even more weapons. I do think that's going to be beneficial. You did shore up the center position with John Michael Schmitz in the interior of that offensive line. Jalen Hyatt, along with the receiver you got from the Colts in free agency, adding some speed to an offense that lacked it last season. Adding Darren Waller at tight end is a massive get for the Giants. There's a lot of weapons now around Daniel Jones. I'm going to say the same thing that I said last year or 2 years ago. I think it might have been. Y'all got guns and shit. The question is, does Daniel Jones know how to use them? I think the last time I talked to Daniel Jones, I was like, bro, you got the safety on. He didn't even know he had the safety on. So you can have guns and shit. If you don't know how to use them, what difference does it make? So we'll see. He says, we added Hyatt to the wide receiving core that we've already added depth to in free agency. And the defense only got better with Banks as cornerback too. And we'll see. I mean, corner was a massive need. You address that. Interior offensive line, specifically center, was a massive need. You address that. You added speed, which was a big problem last year with, as I mentioned, Indianapolis's free agent wide receiver out of Ohio State, and now Jalen Hyatt. So, and I believe you're going to get back Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't know how late in the season his injury occurred, but I'd like to guess that he'll be ready for the start of the season. Maybe not, and he'll start on the PUP list. But even getting him back too would add another weapon to that Giants offense that seems like all of a sudden now it has a ton of weapons after having none really a season ago. Trevor Patch, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Trev writes, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, Music Lesson Fund, subscribed anyways. I don't know if musical lessons are going to help me, man. I think I am what I am at this point. The beauty is I know that I can't sing. I just don't care that I can't sing. So there's a difference of people who actually think they can sing and sound terrible, and people who know they can't sing and don't care. I don't care. I have my moments though. You know what's crazy is I have my moments where I think I sound good. I'm not sure. And then, you know, my wife who actually can sing would be like, no, babe, you don't sound good. So, but she be hyping me up though. My wife is like my biggest fan and cheerleader. So she's dangerous because those type of people boost your ego up and they'll have you thinking your shit don't stink. And then you go out trying that shit outside and yeah, you get your feelings hurt. So people like her can be dangerous. You want those type of people in your corner, but you also have to be very mindful of the fact that they're the best hype men. And hype men sometimes will hype you up to get your ass kicked. So just you have to be careful and you have to balance that. But I'm glad she's in my corner. Anyway, thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch, and the donation. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, John Perez, writes, if LA doesn't get both games in LA, we're screwed. Davis can't have another goose egg like he did last night. Need to protect home court. Everything you said is spot on. You're going to need to win both games. And look, even if you don't win both games at home, then game 5 becomes pivotal because the winner of game 5 is probably going to win the series. If you go back to Golden State, tied at 2. You just got to win one more in Golden State. It's a tough ask. You've done what you needed to do. Protect home court. It's as simple as that. You protect home court. You're undefeated at home thus far in the playoffs. You keep it that way, and you have a great chance of winning the series. But and Golden State struggled on the road. We've chronicled that all season long. But when it was nut cutting time, they got it done on the road twice. So we'll see if that happens in this series or not. If that upholds itself, but I've already mentioned AD seems like he's incapable of posting back-to-back dominant performances. So he'll probably be due for a big game in game 3. But then you're probably going to get a stinker like he got in the Memphis series in game 4, and you were able to somehow still win that game. But you should have lost that game. You bring one of those efforts to the table against Golden State, because we couldn't shoot against y'all. That's the difference, is you were able to sneak a win when you guys were funky from behind the arc, and because we were just as funky as you were. Golden State is going to make 15 to 23s in just about every single game, while you're making 6 or in 7, right? You made 10 the other night, which is a lot for you. If AD doesn't cancel that out and you don't go to the free throw line, there was a parade to the free throw line in game 1. If you didn't have that same parade in game 2, and that's why you lost by 27. If those factors come, because they're going to continue to shoot. So that's a constant, okay? That's not a variable. That's a constant, okay? You need to be able to alter the series by getting to the free throw line and having Anthony Davis dominate. Those are your 2 keys to victory. You do that, you're going to have a chance. Let's see. I think that was the final super. Let's get to some hashtags. We got a little bit of time. Let's get to some hashtags. All right. Mike Lowry. Right. So with the new R&B in the mix, with the new R&B running back in the mix, does AG go back to his gadget role, kick returner? If they don't find a guy, then I do think he's going to be thrusted into that role again. If they don't find a true kick return guy, like Casimir Allen will return kicks if he makes the team. And I would assume that he would be a dual return man, similar to what we had with DeAndre, why can't I think of his last name? Carter, when he returned kickoffs and punts. That's what Casimir Allen would be if he made the team, or whomever makes the team in that role. If they don't have a comfort level with somebody back there, then they could put Antonio Gibson. I think Gibson would be more of, because they still had J.D. McKissick last year, so they felt comfortable enough putting him back there. I think Antonio Gibson is now in that J.D. McKissick role, which means he's too valuable to be returning kickoffs. So no, I don't think he'll be back there this year. I think they will seek out a specific player to handle those duties, even if it has to be Alex Erickson. I don't think Antonio Gibson is your kickoff return man this year, but we'll see. Let's see. Do we have any more hashtags? Rich writes, Jacoby Brissett has said he's done his own deals for years, and D-Hop did it to himself too. But yes, no high tier quarterback. Yeah, I've read that Jacoby Brissett has done all of his deals. Facts. But usually they're 1 year, $10 million. Like, it's not this sophisticated, long-term deal with all of these different escalators and clauses. It's usually, Jacoby coming here, signing bonus is XYZ, workout bonus, roster bonus is XYZ. It's pretty cut and dry. It's 1 year. All right. He's been on a steady diet of 1-2 year deals after his rookie contract. So nobody's done it to that degree. Absolutely. Oh, that one wasn't a hashtag. Let's see. Any other hashtags in here before we move on? Kevin, the PRF writes, even though their fans deserve it, I'm low-key rooting against the Jets. Not a fan of this rent a chip trend with other teams' legacy quarterbacks. I understand that point of view. Um, I was against it initially, but now it's ingrained in the NFL culture now. It's a part of the fabric that makes the league what it is. Every year we get a monster quarterback changing teams. We've had it now, starting with that 2020 season with Brady. Every single year, it was Brady in 2020, it was Stafford in 21, what Russell Wilson in 22, and now Aaron Rodgers in 2023. So it's a trend now that I just expect every offseason. And you don't know who that next guy, and we could even throw Derek Carr in the mix this year. I mean, he's not at the level of the guys that I just mentioned, but I mean, hell, 3 years ago we would have said Matthew Stafford and Derek Carr are not that far away from one another. I would have put Matthew Stafford ahead of him, but you wouldn't have put him that far ahead of Derek Carr. Now, I think with the Super Bowl win, he's separated himself from Derek Carr clearly, but he's another guy that has switched teams and given a team that lacked hope a season ago, a real chance at winning their division. And again, in the NFC where shit's wide open, who knows? All bets are off, right? So I get where you're coming from, but I think that's a part of the NFL now. So I'm not going to run away from that. I'm not going to um, be abrasive to change. I understand, because I'm a get off my lawn type of person too. Old man, get off my lawn when it comes to the NFL. But that hasn't done me any good. I was that way with the overtime rules. I was that way with the extra point. I was that way with and none of that has benefited me any. And most of the changes to the game have been solid. Like you look at it, you say, hey, I'm cool with the extra point being from 33 yards away. Make the damn kick. All right. I'm cool with overtime rules being the way that I actually like the overtime rules. I don't like the playoff overtime rules, but I mean, we saw it one time in action with which was the Cincinnati. Did that game even go to overtime? It was going to go to overtime. We were going to get a glimpse of what that was supposed to be, and then Joseph Osai hit Patrick Mahomes out of bounds. And did that game go to overtime? Am I tripping? Did that AFC Championship game go to overtime or no? I don't think it made it to overtime. I thought Harrison Butker got a field goal as time expired and they won. I could be tripping. I don't know. Anyway, I digress. Let's see. Miss Perry says Erickson ain't it. I'm not disputing that. He's better than Dax Milne. I can tell you that. Shuba Tank writes, any chance Gates takes over center and we put Stromberg at guard? Sure. Absolutely. Anything's possible. Nothing's etched in stone. Ricky Stromberg has already said, I'll play anywhere that they want me to play. He's not coming in like Gates has said, I want to be a center. Now, he's also said, I'll play wherever they put me, and I've got experience at guard, but I'm a center. I like being in control. So he has a preference. Stromberg is, when you're a rookie, you're just happy to be in the league. So you'll do whatever they ask you to do. Gates signed here as a free agent. So he had preferences, right? He could have said, hey, if you're not going to play me at center, I'll just sign somewhere else where they're going to give me an opportunity to be a center. So I think he came here with the understanding that he was going to get a legitimate shot at center. So I see Gates being the starting center, and then we'll figure out what they decide to do with Stromberg, whether they just leave him as the backup center or if they try to integrate him into the offensive line as a guard, primarily left guard. Obviously, getting work at guard is important because we've had injuries at guard each of the last 4 or 5 years. Brandon Sheriff never played an entire season when he was here. Sam Cosmi hasn't played a full season since being drafted 2 years ago. So if Cosmi is your starting guard at right guard, if that's the option you're going with, you've got to assume that at some point Sam Cosmi is going to miss time. You're going to need someone to step up and play right guard for you. So we'll see what happens. But I assume they'll have Ricky Stromberg ready to go wherever he needs to be. JP says, is Gibson back on the Commanders team in 2024? It really, truly just boils down to how well he plays this year, honestly. If he doesn't play well this year, or let's say he sustains something, I'm not going to put that in the atmosphere, but if something were to happen and he doesn't have a good year, no, I don't think he's back. If he has the type of year that we know he's capable of having, absolutely he's back. And a guy in his role doesn't make a ton of money. You saw the money J.D. McKissick got, 2 years, $7 million. Running backs aren't making a ton of money, especially if you're not the guy. You're not making big bread at the running back position. So, yeah, I think he could definitely be back here in Washington if he puts together a really good season. So that'll be what you will be looking at, because a lot of people just assume, oh, this is the last year of Antonio Gibson in Washington. It doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be. JP writes, is there also a chance Ron loses his job in season? Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, how the season goes, wins and losses wise, will ultimately determine what happens to Ron and decide his fate. If this team is in contention late into the season, Ron isn't going anywhere during the season. He may be fired after the season, but he won't be going anywhere. If this team is out of contention with 4 or 5 games to go, yeah, I could see him getting canned, because I've already talked about this last night, but it behooves a ownership group, specifically if you're new, to get a head start on the competition looking for his replacement. You can't actively look for a new coach. I mean, you can technically if you do it quietly without anybody knowing, but you run the risk of the NFL finding out. And now you're being docked draft picks or, some crazy thing like that, like we saw with the Arizona Cardinals, for talking to Jonathan Gannon before it was legal. You don't want to put yourself in that position. So if you're ready to start pursuing other candidates, you need to go ahead and remove the current guy from the position so that you're able to do that freely. So, yeah, if we're not in contention, they're probably going to get rid of Ron, and it could happen in season. I don't see us being out of contention, however. So I don't think he's going to be, but anything can happen. Another one of those slow starts and all bets are off. This has to be, if Ron wants to save his job, he wants things to be different. We got to get off to a better start than 1-4, which has been like the theme of his career here in Washington. We were 1-5 in 2020. We were 2-6 in 20, because we were 2-2, if you recall, in 2021, but we ended up 2-6 after the 2-2 start. And then we were 1-4 last year. He's going to have to get off to a faster start. We can't be 3-4 games under 500 at the midpoint of the season like we've been the last 3 years, essentially. You're asking for trouble. Niners fan writes, Trey is going to start because Brock is missing the start of the season. And if Trey can't beat out Sam Darnold, I don't know what to tell you. So I didn't know what his injury situation was, because obviously it happened in the playoffs. So you're talking about January. I don't know how extensive the rehabilitation process was for the injury that he incurred. I just assumed it wasn't a leg. It wasn't something major. So he'll be back by training camp. Clearly I'm wrong. And if he's going to miss, is he going to start the season on the PUP list, or is he just going to be active on the active roster, but inactive on game days? How's that going to work? Are they going to just go ahead and eat the first 5 weeks of the season with the pup list, or what? You don't know that yet. That's interesting stuff. And this is Trey Lance's showcase, not only to the 49ers, but to the rest of the league, that if he's not the guy in San Francisco, hey, come and get me. Come and get me, because the 49ers were actively shopping him, and all reports kind of pointed to, hey, nobody was really interested. The line wasn't really ringing. So Shub Tank says, going into camp, aside from known position battles, guard, tight end, etc., what is a sleep position battle that you are anticipating? I don't know if there is truly any real battles. I think the secondary is going to be interesting, because we don't know what they're going to do at corner, and we don't know. I mean, we assume Quan Martin is the new nickel. A pretty safe assumption to make, but we still do have some safeties that we like, and so it's going to be tough getting everybody on the field. So they're going to have to figure out some things there. But I mean, really, I've said this already. Our roster is pretty much spoken for. This is why, one, I didn't think we needed to have 10, 11 players in the draft. We don't have enough roster spots for 10, 11 players. And two, you kind of know what we have already, and there are going to be a few positional battles, but I said the back end of our roster is only like 4 or 5 spots available, seriously. So I think we kind of know, right? Like defensive line, we know the 4 guys that are starting. We know the backups there. Like that's not going to be a surprise. There's no battles. We know who's going to be there. Linebacker is interesting, but again, I mean, is it really a battle? None of those guys are competing to start. You're just competing to make the squad. Offensive line, you already said, that's not a sleeper position. We know that there are going to be some battles, brewing there. Yeah, I really don't know if there's any, I mean, return man, that clearly is one that we've talked about that you didn't mention. So yeah, I'd say that. And they did bring in another kicker. I think they brought in a kicker. I know they brought in a punter at one point, which I'm like, for what? He's not beating out Tress Way. However, if they brought in another kicker, and I think they did that, but then I think he had got poached. So I don't know if there's another kicker. That would be interesting too, to see if Joey Sly could maintain his job. I like Joey Sly, but I need Joey to be just a tad bit more consistent. He wasn't terrible, but he's going down that Dustin Hopkins slippery slope of, oh man, he only missed 1 kick and it didn't cost it. Like, no, don't miss that kick. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't be that guy. Like against Dallas, he missed a kick in that game from like 32 yards away. And you're like, bro, what the fuck, man? What are you doing? Now, it didn't cost us and we won that game going away, but what if that game was like nip and tuck? Like, bro, you can't be missing 31-yard kicks. Get your life together. So, I don't know. We'll see. Niners fan says, Lou, what do you think about D. Winters and Robert Beal from Georgia? We're hoping Winters can replace Azeez Al-Shire and Beal can develop into a rotational pass rusher. I like Robert Beal. I'm not the biggest fan of D. Winters. Those are some big shoes to fill, Azeez Al-Shire, because he was that dude, that first dude off the bench, essentially. And at times he was a starter for you, and he was outstanding. I loved him. I was interested in him in free agency. But Beal is one that I think ultimately can benefit you. I think he'll be a guy that'll be in that mix as a rotational pass rusher, and I think he'll play well for you. So I do like Beal. I'm not as high on Winters. JP writes, you have to admit our secondary looks a lot better than it did last year with Forbes and Martin coming in and Defoe's emergence. Facts. I mean, that's not hard to admit. You know, anybody would be a fool to not feel like we're in a much better spot this year going into camp than we were last year. I mean, it's night and day difference. So, yeah. Niners fan says he was working with Mahomes this offseason and his release looks a lot quicker and smoother, albeit from one small clip of him throwing. I'm optimistic. That's good, man. Any help that he can get is good. Health is the biggest thing for him. The dude is talented, man. Dude is talented. He's just got to stay healthy. He hasn't done it the first 2 years of his career. Specifically last year when he was getting the opportunity. And the beauty of last year was the 49ers were ready to take lumps with Trey Lance to get that process off the ground. And if he struggled, they were okay with it. He doesn't have the luxury of that this year. If he struggles, they're going to yank his ass. That's the difference between this year, because now they know what they have in Brock Purdy. They didn't know what Brock Purdy was last year. So they were ready to take the bumps and the bruises and the lumps along the way. They're not willing to go through that with him this year. That's the part that sucks if you're Trey Lance, is you don't have the leeway that you had a season ago. That went out the window when you got hurt and, you know, Brock Purdy came in and did what he did after Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. All right. I think we are here. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Reedy Davis writes, Lou, what's your win total that you give us this year? Hard to say. Got to see the schedule first. I see the schedule. I may be more optimistic. I may be more negative. I may be indifferent. I don't know. I can't say right now. Kind of want to see how everything, it's so early. I kind of want to see how everything kind of comes together first before I'll end up making a prediction for the season probably way earlier than I should. I think we did that same thing last year with the Super Friends. So we'll probably end up doing that again. But I'll tell you this. I like where we are. I like that nobody's paying any attention to us. We're the forgotten team. We're an afterthought in our division. Nobody respects us, expects us to stink. Everyone's circling us on the calendar as a dub. I love that. I absolutely relish the role that we're in. At some point, though, you gotta seek out the role of the hunted. We always like being the hunter, where nobody's looking for us and we get to sneak up on you and attack you without you even knowing. At some point, you got to embrace being the hunted. Hey, we know you good. We coming for your ass, and you got to be able to defend your turf. But we're not there yet. So we don't have to worry about that right now. We just need to be able to be stealthy when we sneak up on teams and make sure when we put them down for good. All right. So I'm gonna take these last two hashtags and then we're gonna move on. HHC Lunar writes, if you've seen any of Caleb Williams, is he really worth all the hype a year out? Yeah, he's good, man. I wanted to not like him so bad. Him and Drake, man. I was like, man, both of them can kick rocks. They're good. Both of them are really good. I had to admit, like, damn, I don't want to like him. Shit, he's good. I said, Drake May, man, he looked like a big ass stalk of broccoli. What this tall ass dude gonna do? And he don't look like he an athlete. And then I watched 2 games of him, and then I watched another game of him, and I was like, shit, he's really good. So those 2 dudes are definitely at the top of the draft next year, and then we'll see if anybody joins them. But those guys are definitely right now, as we sit here, and we know how things can change in a year. It won't for Caleb Williams. There's enough of a body of work there that he's fine. Drake May is interesting because he's one disastrous season away from people turning their back on him. I don't think it's going to happen. And all it takes is one team to say, hey, forget about 2023. Did you see 22 and 21, though? And he still can get drafted. So, yeah, Caleb Williams is legit. He's definitely one of those dudes you have a campaign around, like Suck for Luck, like we had back in the days. And then they had one Tank for Trevor. Yeah. Can for Caleb. Yeah. One of them type campaigns will definitely be started here shortly. Be weak for Williams, something like that. That was whack. Leon Polk writes, question, 5 games into the season and Montez has more sacks than Young. Do you think we're trading him mid-season? No, because again, you're talking about Young, I'm assuming. Doesn't matter. Neither one of those dudes are getting traded because there's no value. Again, now, if a team is desperate and they see Chase Young and they're willing to give you, say, a 4th round. Here's the thing. If you let Chase Young walk, you're getting a compensatory 3rd round pick in 2025. So why would you trade him for anything less than a 3rd round pick? You're not going to get anything more for him, and you're probably going to net yourself a 3rd rounder. So the likelihood is you're not going to trade him because it's not going to give you back the return on the investment. You're getting a 3rd rounder no matter what. So more likely than not, I can't say that with 100% certainty, but if he signs a solid deal with somebody, you're getting a 3rd round compensatory pick. So why would you trade him for anything less than that? Doesn't make any sense. So I don't think that's going to happen. But again, anything can happen. All right, let's transition to the final segment of the show and garbage time. So I was perusing social media and I saw the Kyle Brandt list, and I really didn't want to do this because I don't like this. They do this so that people can talk about it, and I don't like adding fuel to that fire. My guy JL Smooth brought up the AFC quarterback tier list that Kyle Brandt had on his show. And of course, because that one got people talking, he was like, well, I'm going to do an NFC tier. And of course, if it favors your quarterback, you're going to retweet it. I saw LB posting and retweeting and tweeting and retweeting again. And I'm like, okay, guy. Because Jalen Hurts was number 1 by himself in tier 1, like Mahomes was in the AFC. And I'm like, that's so trash. Like, we live in such a prisoner of the moment type of society. It's ridiculous. Look, I'm not telling you that Jalen Hurts isn't the best quarterback in the NFC, but is he alone by himself in tier 1? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be in tier 1. I'm just saying, are you not going to put a healthy Matthew Stafford in tier 1 with him? Because the last time I checked, Jalen Hurts doesn't have any hardware. So you're putting him at tier 1 because of a Super Bowl loss? I get it. He was outstanding. They still lost. He fumbled in that game. They still lost the game. I don't want to hear that he didn't have the football at the end to do anything about it. They lost the game, and he was a part of the loss. He doesn't fumble that football, and they don't scoop it up and score, they probably don't lose the game. And again, I can't say that for certain, but I do know that directly led to 7 points in a game that they lost by 3. But that's nor here nor there. He hasn't won a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying he should be in the same tier. And the second tier consisted of Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, and Kirk Cousins. I'm not saying he should be in the same tier with those dudes. All I'm saying is Matthew Stafford should be in that tier with him. Because when I think about quarterbacks in the NFC, it's Stafford and it's Dak and it's Jalen Hurts right now. And then it's everybody else. Again, a healthy Matthew Stafford, which we can never guarantee. But if Stafford's healthy and he's got weapons to get the football to, I still think Matthew Stafford is one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and argue over, the tiers that he put quarterbacks in. I thought it was laughable that Baker Mayfield was in the 4th tier. Like, why is he in the 4th tier? And then you got all these young guys. Like, I get all the young boys being in tier 6. But NFC's a much more clear-cut tier. It's easier to break it down because we just don't have any quarterbacks on our side. Everybody's young. Everybody's young on the NFC side of the bracket. So it's so much easier on our side. It's a lot harder in the AFC. Mahomes makes it easy to put him ahead of everybody else. That second tier, looked legit. It was Burrow, it was Allen, and I think I don't remember. It was one more quarterback. I can't recall who was the other quarterback on that tier, but I said all of that to say this. Are we sure Jalen Hurts is the clear-cut best quarterback in the NFC? Are we positive? I've already said the young man's going to have to prove it to me one more time. If you put a gun to my head and you said, give me the best quarterback in the conference, I'm probably going to pick him, but I need to see it again. I've been duped before by an outstanding season from a quarterback, and only for them to not follow that up with another season of that kind of play. So I just want to see it again. But I'd sit there and think. I wouldn't just spit out Jalen Hurts' name. I'd sit there and I'd kind of ponder over whether it's him or it's Matthew Stafford. And you're telling me Stafford is healthy. I know he throws interceptions. That comes with the territory, but he also throws a lot of touchdown passes. Jalen Hurts didn't even throw 25 touchdown passes. I get it. His legs are a huge part of that package, and he probably rushed for 12, 13, touchdowns last year. I understand all of that. Anyway, it was just something that I saw, but I digress. That's going to do it for me. Your man, Louie T, here on the 332nd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me on this Friday. I want to remind you once again, brand new channel that I've launched. It's a music channel called MusicHead University. Shout out to my awesome moderators. My mods have dropped the link in the comment section for you guys to go over there. I'm going to make sure that I put the link in the comment section of this video when it is done and pin it to the top so that you'll have access to that. If you would like to subscribe, again, if you're not a music fan or you don't care to hear me talk about nor listen to music, then this is not the channel for you. Don't bother subscribing. But if you would love to support and you're going to actually watch, by all means, please, please, please enroll in MusicHead University on YouTube. That is the new channel. So, Red Wing 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I'm glad I'm not the only one noticing Casimir ain't as fast as people say. Like, he's fast, but he's not game breaking. I think it's an acceleration thing too, though, because when he has a runway, he hits a second gear. I think his problem isn't initial burst, to your point. There's an initial acceleration through the first wave of defenders. I think his long distance speed, however, isn't great. So the further he has to run, the slower he gets. Some guys are able to hit top speed and maintain that top speed for 40, 50 yards. He doesn't seem like he's capable of doing that. It seems like his top speed happens in his first 5 to 10 yards, maybe 15. And then by the time he gets to 25, 30 yards down the field, he's looking over his shoulder at, all right, who's coming to get me? I'm running out of gas here. And so I didn't see like breakaway game change. And I think that's part of the reason he didn't get drafted. Like, you saw Darius Davis get drafted in the 4th round out of TCU. Now, he was more of a receiver than a gadget guy, but he had true breakaway speed. Right? You could see it. Guys weren't catching him from behind, and he wasn't bothering to check over his shoulder. When you're fast, I'm not looking over my shoulder. You're not catching me. When I got track speed, nah, I'm good. I dare you to catch me. He's constantly looking back, and he's angling for the pylon. These are tactics that people who aren't as fast use. And there's nothing wrong with that. Use every advantage that you can, right, to get where you ultimately want to be, which is the end zone. But you know, the funny thing about fans is that they're gonna build this dude up. He wasn't drafted for a reason. Like, that's the thing about undrafted players. And I'm not saying that there isn't a diamond in the rough. There isn't a gem that you can unearth with these undrafted players. I mean, we got one potentially in Rodgers last year. We've seen guys be super successful in this league as undrafted players, but it's very unlikely. And too often people get so caught up in these undrafted guys. You know how excited I was 2 years ago for the tight end out of Florida? Reyes, Samis Reyes. You know how excited I was for him? That was a waste of time and energy that I can't get back. I told myself after that, I'm never doing that again. I was way too excited about Samis Reyes and his potential. And you know what made it worse was I predicted that we would go after him, or that we should at least go after him. And we did, and we got him, and nothing came of it. That's disappointing. And from that point forward, I said, never again. Unless I see a guy that I go, whoa, what is he doing here? This is interesting. I haven't seen that. So, yeah. All right. LT, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Hurts is wired different. That's what makes him different. You're right. You're not wrong. He's definitely wired differently. He's definitely a guy that's cut from a different cloth. And his mindset is what makes him the player that he ultimately is. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And maybe that's part of the process that I'm not taking into consideration, or I'm not weighing heavily enough. You're probably right about that, because playing the quarterback position and being a competitor, a lot of that is the neck up. You know, a good deal of it is the neck up. Probably 35 to 40% of it is neck up. Maybe even more, because we've seen plenty of athletes and guys with all the tools necessary. It's probably more like 60% is neck up, and he's got it. So you're probably right about that. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on this installment of the Louie T Network podcast. You guys have a fantastic weekend. I will try and do the same, and we will reconvene on the other side of the weekend. You guys take care. God bless, and good night.
Louie T Network.